Welcome back. And I have something to celebrate with all of you. It's Fun Friday, or what we like to call Frantic Fun Friday, or Free
Anything
for
goes.
All. Yeah, Free for All Fun Friday. And today's Free for All Fun Friday is about varied topics that I think will surprise all of you, none of which I believe, Julie, have to do with real estate. So that I'll actually give you a little bit of a
One
reprieve from.
kind of does. One kind
Okay,
of does, but it's fun. It's fun.
it'll give you a reprieve from our normal real estate coaching and training. This is for us to celebrate the end of the week and hopefully the end of what has been for you a fantastic week. So we're going to be going through Julie's points. I'm going to start out by saying thank you, 4 points. We're going to go out stories that she's found that she wants to have, she and I will banter on. And I've only scanned these. So these are going to be the first time I've heard these stories and maybe, we'll all have some fun with it. I want to start out by thanking all of you for helping us successfully relaunch Premier Coaching. It's called Premier Coaching 2.0 and Ethical Real Estate Professional. Now, we did a small group launch. Those of you who texted us last year, you received special invitations to grab your ethical real estate professional designations before we start opening the doors for the larger group. But we're going to start doing that probably today or Saturday or Sunday or Monday or Tuesday or like one of the days. You're going to get an email, and when you do, make sure you grab your spot for the webinar right away. Julie and I are going to be working our butts off the next probably 2 weeks doing a lot of webinars. And what we're doing on these webinars is they're essentially masterminds. It's covering the three biggest challenges that agents are having right now that you must learn to overcome quickly to make the most of what we know is going to be the greatest housing boom in the history of humanity. And we think we're at the very beginning stages of a 25-year-long housing boom. So with that in mind, make sure you register for the webinar. The webinar description, the link is down below in the show description for today, or you can just go to joinpremiercoaching.com. And either way, but the link down below that should be showing up everywhere will we'll take you right to registration page and just grab your day and time for the mastermind that you want to attend. We're doing them in all different time zones and different times of the day. So all of you should be able to join. If you are not finding the links, just go to joinpremiercoaching.com. This is the only way that you can join Ethical Real Estate Professional, which I know a lot of you have been waiting to join. And I think I'm so excited, frankly. I'm exhausted, but I'm excited to finally have this massive project done. Julie and I
Yes.
started this in earnest last August, and we've
Hmm.
been working on it every day for usually, just focus purely on this new product for 4 to 6 hours a day. We couldn't delegate any of what we were doing except for some of the technical stuff because all this material was essentially the Harris, Premier Coaching System. And then we added the ethical real estate professional designation. Look, I could talk forever about it because I'm so thrilled it's mostly done as far as the creation and the implementation of it. But for now, I want you to remember the only way this is all of our efforts and all of your hopes and ambitions to be a member of Ethical Real Estate Professional, the only way they're going to come to fruition is if you join the Ethical Real Estate Professional. And the only way to do it, you can't do it by going to Ethical Real Estate Professional, the website. You have to go through this webinar because I want you to clearly understand what we're trying to do for the industry. Julie and I want to hit hard reset on the perceptions that consumers have, heck, even practitioners have, of real estate professionals. And that's what Ethical Real Estate Professional, the designation is going to be all about. So you're going to get that as part of Premier Coaching. All right. So there it is. Go to joinpremiercoaching.com or just click the link below and you can join. And Julie, I know I need to set up an SMS code for that. I'm going to write
Yep.
that down. And
Hmm.
so let's roll into your frantic fun Friday topics.
Yes. And if by some chance this is the first time listening to us, our Monday through Thursday show is all about real estate. Most of you listening are real estate sales professionals, brokers, some of you are mortgage professionals. So Fun Friday is a bit off of that menu. So don't worry. We'll be back to normal real estate programming Monday through Thursday as promised. Okay. So we have 4 stories today. And I have to say, all of them are my favorite, but number 1 and number 4 probably are the best in my
But
opinion.
we should share with them where we get come the inspirations for these stories. And
Mhm.
just because we've talked about this briefly before, and I think it's some of the feedback we got from people direct messaging me on Instagram was interesting. So
Mhm.
Julie and I intentionally, or we actively try to always check our precepts about just about everything. So if we have a strongly held belief, it's not about everything, but most things, we're always going to be looking for countervailing reasons to believe that maybe our belief structures need to be updated because we don't want to get complacent. We don't want to get stuck because if we get stuck in the way we think about things, this podcast isn't going to be as popular as it is, and we're not going to be in alignment with our highest and truest mission, which is being a service to all of you guys. So what Julie and I will do on a regular basis, and we use Google Alerts for this if you're curious about it, is we'll look for reasons that to believe our assumptions about how to build a successful real estate practitioner, really practice, but really about how to have a successful life, why they might be out of sync. And when we find them, we'll update our belief structure and we'll share it with all of you guys. But the other thing that we do, Julie and I, as you guys know, go on walks every day, 4 miles, 6 miles, whatever it is. And we talk about different fun things that are not real estate related because we don't want to be walking for 90 minutes and just be talking like we are still working. So we'll talk about the zaniest, funniest things. And she and I, we've been married for 34 years this year. So we try to, we've done this for most of our marriage, and we try to find things that will make the other person think, like, it just amuse the other person, basically. Julie's always
Sometimes just interesting things, or, something new that was discovered.
Yeah.
I think it's important too, especially those of you who are really in the thick of it with real estate, or even if you're just up and coming and you're learning and you're practicing and you're just in it, to expand what you're thinking about and what you're reading and get out of that world. I've had a lot of coaching calls this week. I had one client, Dion, in Los Angeles, that spent countless hours on one very difficult deal. She finally landed the plane and got it together, but I can just imagine how much of her mindset and her energy and her emotions that consumed. So I think it's a good habit for everyone to be in, to be looking at different things. Like you and I listen to a lot of different podcasts that are not real estate related. We read articles. I read the Smithsonian stuff every day. They get a newsletter called 1440 that has all kinds of interesting things in it. Just get out of your own way, I think, is how I would put it.
It's because you might want to close that door behind you too, Julie. But the other thing is that like a lot of us at the end of the day, if we're doing the same things every day, we get tired, we get exhausted. And so some people will turn to exercise, which is great. Other people will turn to alcohol and things like that to have a relief. And what Julie and I do is we try to find things that are intellectually stimulating, because we find that, generally speaking, those things are going to allow us to feel more of a sense of relief from the daily grind than virtually anything else, because it's allowing your brain to expand in different ways. And look, when there was all these, you guys remember 18 months ago, 24 months ago, there's all this talk about aliens. Oh man, we deep dived into that. That was fantastic. So fun.
You just wait till point number 4.
Okay, good. All right. So without any additional preamble, my dear, let's roll in.
Okay, so our first story, and you can feel free to jump in and slow me down or speed me up if you like. First interesting story of the week: octopuses and fish team up and throw punches. And yes, we're using notes because there's a lot to this.
Well,
okay.
I was gonna say, if they want these notes, if you want these notes for some crazy reason, which I wouldn't quite understand for today's show, but if you do, go to harrisrealestatedaily.com and subscribe to the newsletter, harrisrealestatedaily.com. And you get all of our notes from all of our podcasts, and also a lot of exclusive content and material. It's free. It doesn't cost you anything. It takes 2 seconds. Just drop in your email address, and then you have to go to your normal email, and then you have to double opt in. You're off to the races. All right, Julie, let's hear this crazy story.
Okay, back to our octopuses and fish teaming up. They are the ocean's team captains. Picture this: a big blue octopus. They're actually called big blue octopus. It's called Octopus cyanea, cyan like blue, right? Running a hunting squad with 2 to 10 fish buddies like blue goatfish and groupers. This is happening in the Red Sea. There's people that study this stuff. These brainy cephalopods are calling the shots, leading 13 hunting missions caught on 120 hours of underwater footage. Who knew that they were such team players? Well, move over, lone wolves. Meet the ocean's ultimate squad leader. Here's a fun fact. These hunts were filmed off of Israel, Egypt, and Australia, proving that they are global bosses. So here's what happens. The fish scouts and the octopus muscle. The playbook is this: blue goatfish zip around, sniffing out small fish, crustaceans, or mollusks like the ultimate recon team. Then the octopus swoops in, using its bendy arms to flush prey from the coral crevices. This is a win-win. The fish get access to hidden snacks, and the octopus uses fish pals as an extended sensory system. It sounds like a heist movie, Ocean's 11, but with tentacles. The 2024 Nature study shows this teamwork makes hunting way more efficient for both species. But here's my favorite part. I don't know why I think this is funny, but I just do. The slacker fish get punched by the octopus.
Well,
not pulling your
explain.
weight. The octopus isn't having it. Lazy fish, especially black tip groupers who just loaf around waiting to ambush the other fish, they get an explosive punch from the octopus arm. The punches push the freeloaders to the edge of the group or get rid of them entirely, and no fish ever dares to punch back. It's respecting the boss. Keep up or get out. Imagine your coworker getting a tentacle for skipping the team project. Octopuses invented workplace accountability. Who knew? So there you are. I could go on, but
In case any of you are uncertain if Julie's a nerd or not, well, you now have your the jury is now officially in. But
it's
it
one
is
of my
funny.
rabbit holes. I go down the
I
octopus
know.
stuff, and I showed you the video of this actually happening. It was quite fascinating. I think I found this one on the Smithsonian newsletter.
It was pretty hilarious though when you watch this little, you guys should Google this, and there's videos like she just said. But this octopus is, big ass octopus with these little tiny octopus that are his little hunting buddies. And
Not
then
even
there's
octopus; these are fish. That's why this was a story. Is it was
oh
like a
yeah,
cross species
I
thing.
meant to say fish. Yeah. Well, but yeah, that's the big takeaway. Emphasize that, Julie, the fact that this is a cross species thing.
Yeah, well, the big question that now these scientists have is, do octopuses pick their fish partners like we choose besties, or is it whoever just shows up? They're diving deeper to see if they favor top performing fish, like the goatfish that tend to go on these hunting expeditions. But this could unlock even more about the octopus brain power. So we can marvel about these 8-armed managers that keep the ocean's food chain in check. A lot of people have thought of octopus in the past as these lone creatures that just hang out under rocks and do their own thing, but now they're showing that there's actually some communication. And I could watch these videos all day, but I won't. Ready
Well,
for story number two?
well, they are fascinating. I mean, you and
They
I have
are.
watched. You send me octopus stuff all the damn
Oh,
time.
remember the one that snuck out of the
Tell the
aquarium
story.
at the zoo?
Tell the
Okay.
story.
So this is all on YouTube and various sites, but there's this great footage of this octopus that's at an aquarium as part of a zoo, and it waits until everybody goes home, the lights are out, and it's quiet, and it knows how to undo the lid, and it will actually get out of, because they can survive out of water for a while. It'll slink down the side, and it'll go into somebody else's tank and sometimes eat them, and then
Well,
it puts itself back in its own tank.
so
It's
that what exactly what she's saying. You guys got to watch this video online. But literally, exactly as she
yeah.
described. But the scientists, the zookeepers, if you would, could not figure out what was happening to this, these fish in these other tanks.
Right.
And there's this octopus who is like, they go in and visit with him every morning. He's going like, beats the hell out of me. I don't, with all of his legs, I have no idea what happened. I don't look at me. I mean, I'm innocent.
I
I
didn't
just
do
go,
it.
I didn't do it. And so they put a camera on this big booger, and you can actually see the thing waiting for all the people to leave, the lights to go dim, clearly no humans there. And it just sit there biding its time with all of its tentacles, and then it
Mhm.
would slowly crawl out. And it had figured out, and they had the lid secured. This wasn't an
Mhm.
open aquarium. He figured out, or she had figured out how to slim, because octopuses can make their bodies as thin as a piece
And
of paper,
squish down.
basically.
Mhm.
Yeah, and squished out, and then crawl across the floor. Was it floor or was it other surfaces?
It
It
was
doesn't
like
matter.
a cement floor. I think it stopped at the drain for a second and then slithered up
And
the.
slithered up, and then would go. Bloop,
Yep.
bloop. It was so
Little snack
funny.
time, little midnight snack. Actually,
Well,
I believe this has been a couple years ago. I read there's a children's book that I had for Zoe for a while about that incident, that very octopus. So people can Google that if they want.
yeah. Well, it
Anyway,
makes all of us, you were telling me this story of the one you just read to all of us yesterday when we were walking Max, and we were trying to think if there's ever any interspecies commingling, and there are with dogs. I mean, dogs
for
and
sure.
wolves and humans,
Mhm.
and so there's not very many other things where you do see different species that are actually working
Yeah,
together to
sometimes birds,
accomplish it.
I think, will do some stuff like that, working together. So yeah, that's
But
my octopus story du jour.
all right, so there's octopus story number one. So you guys have to vote on which of these four stories that Julie's bringing to Frantic Fun Friday
There
is
you
your
go.
favorite. So number one, and you guys got to put it in comments. And then so number one was the octopus story, which is always fun to, especially if you've got little kids to show them the videos. All right, story number two, Julie Harris, go for it.
Okay, now this one is kind of real estate related. Naturally, as we read things, we run into a lot of real estate stories. Boxable, which is spelled Boxabl, that's a modular home company. Homes that unfold like origami. Boom, housing crisis solved, right? Boxable's modular homes are here to karate chop the US housing shortage. And I did some research on that. There's a lot of estimates. We often hear about 1.5 million short of homes, but now they're estimating 4 to 7 million homes short when you go to things like first time buyer like micro condos and stuff like that. If you put everything in the mix, but here and there, there's millions of houses that we're missing.
Julie, did you read last week that the greatest percent of buyers, I think, so far this year were boomers, not millennials?
I know. Nobody would
Right.
ever think that, right?
Right. So to think the boomers haven't had their day in the sun yet for real estate, controlling the real estate markets, it
Yeah.
seems like, well, it's because they
It
have
makes
money.
sense though with cash, right? Because
Exactly.
something like 40% of sales right now are cash. And, think of your average first time buyer probably doesn't have $400,000 in cash laying around. So that kind of makes sense. But I was
Did,
surprised by that too.
did you read what kind of homes they're buying? Did you read what
Tell
their
me.
transactions are mostly? They're not downsizing. They're not buying
They're
they're not
upsizing?
like, buying multiple homes and they're upsizing.
Wow.
Boomers. And so the oldest generation of boomers, I think we're Generation X. So I think the youngest of all the boomers are still a good 10 years older than us, I think. Not maybe
Mid
10, but maybe
60s, maybe something like
yeah,
that.
something like that. And then I think that the oldest generation, like your parents aren't boomers. And so
They're,
I forget, but they're still buying and selling, and they're still
yeah,
buying and selling, and they're not downsizing, which I think is,
true. It's very interesting.
it's going to create more housing headwinds, frankly, because there's going to less
Yeah.
inventory coming for sale. So just keep all that in mind when Julie's talking about the importance of all this new
Yeah.
construction. And I'm going to inject this right here into your story because I
Sure.
did glance. You're not talking about it, and that's fine. We do firmly believe that Fannie and Freddie are going to come out of conservatorship sometime, hopefully sooner than later. And that is going to create a lot of velocity in the different types of mortgages that are out there, the different types of people that will qualify for different types of loans. And for example, this boxable thing that Julie's talking about with modular homes historically have been impossible to finance with Fannie or Freddie. So if we see Fannie and Freddie coming out of conservatorship and Fannie and Freddie then having to become more, uh,
Flexible.
not flexible necessarily, but competitive, Julie,
Mhm.
because JP Morgan and other big banks are planning on getting the same business as Fannie and Freddie. They're just an elaborate insurance company in essence. I won't bore you guys with too much more of this information. But the moral of the story is once Fannie and Freddie are finally out of government control and they're back as private institutions, you're going to see a flurry of new stuff that we maybe even never have thought of. New types of residential housing is going to come to market because that type of housing will be financeable through government-backed financing. The biggest headwind, one of the biggest headwinds to the lack of inventory is the obviously construction being able to build new homes. But the construction the new homes that are being built are mostly stick built homes, which have to rely on existing supply chains and take a certain amount of time to build. Even if you're in an area with no basement and perfect weather, it's still going to take 4 to 6 months, things like that. But the types of homes that we suspect once Fannie and Freddie start allowing them to be financed that are going to come to market are like what Julie's about to read to you. So expand your thinking. And so when you start hearing these headlines, because there's going to be a lot of headlines about Fannie and Freddie staying under government control. And the people that are advocates of Fannie and Freddie staying under government control, just to cut through all the malarkey, are people that are basically want the U.S. government to socialize housing and for all housing to essentially be an elaborate entitlement, which it never could be, never will be. But they're trying to control how is that adversely affecting consumers? There again, research this. You're not going to find this on any mainstream media, but there's so much added expense that's packed into a mortgage that's a Fannie and Freddie mortgage now because of the fact that the government has no competition. PMIs being the biggest one, but there's a whole bunch of other things that are packed in that
Mhm.
raises the rate, but what it really does is raise the payment and raises the closing costs. So with more competition will come more mortgage variety, but also will lower the costs. So anyone that's saying mortgage expense will go up with privatization, I want you to ask yourself this obvious question, obvious to answer question is, can you think of an example where more competition hasn't ultimately driven down prices and increased essentially the varieties of things you could buy? It doesn't even make sense logically. More competition means that people are going to have to compete on price. Fannie and Freddie have no competition. And so all of us have institutionalized into our thinking when you're looking at your closing documents on a buyer side, especially when the lender's showing the buyer all their expenses and their monthly mortgage payments, all those little miscellaneous things that don't really make sense usually are acronyms.
Closing disclosure stuff that you
Most
have to actually make an effort to read.
Right. Most of those things are just packed in that would be eliminated once Fannie and Freddie had to actually start competing. And a lot of the folks that are talking against the release from conservatorship are also the same ones that are benefiting from those institutionalized expenses.
Mhm.
Mark Zandi, yes, I'm talking about you, and he's the one that's on the news channels all the time talking about how the world's going to come to an end if Fannie or Freddie are coming out of conservatorship. But we had Keith Jensen on our podcast about a month ago, and he was pointing out the fact that, well, of course, Mark's going to say that. He's supposedly making around $1 million a year as being on the board of directors to one of the largest PMI companies in the
Mhm.
United States. So you got to really question why people are holding the opinions that they are. And it's almost always because of their own personal financial self-interest. Our personal financial self-interest is in alignment with yours, which is making it so there's more sales velocity. Thus, Julie's point number 2. Remember, you guys are supposed to vote on which story you like best. Now we're moving to Julie's point number
That was
2.
point 1.5.
Yes.
By the way, Tim, that article I sent you, Ackman said at the end of the article that he believes that things will happen sooner rather than later. He said he believes that resolving the tariff issues are number 1, tax policy is number 2, but the Freddie and Fannie thing could very well be number 3.
They don't know what you're talking about. So Bill Ackman is the CEO and founder of Pershing Capital, and he is look for information about what the things that he's writing about Fannie and Freddie. He's created what will be probably the exit map for Fannie and Freddie, and his thesis is there's going to be an IPO for Fannie and Freddie in 2026. But look, we're getting into the weeds.
We'll get into that on a different podcast. Yeah.
Right. But just we're sharing this with you guys because you got to understand the things that are important that directly affect, frankly, your pocketbook are the things that we are talking about on our podcast, on the normal podcast, not on Friday necessarily, because it's going to either enhance or inhibit your ability to do more transactions. How many people have you had that have shown up in your life that would be great, buyers, but they didn't have enough down payment, or the PMI blew it out so that, the average PMI on the average home in America that's say $400,000, Julie and I figured out it was like $271 a month. Well, what does that equate to in additional purchasing power if there wasn't that much junk fee in the form of a PMI on everyone's mortgage payment? It's insane. And no one talks about that. When was the last time you heard anybody in mainstream media saying exactly what I just said? Nobody does, right?
It would make a huge dent in both qualifying, the purchase power, and your payment. Maybe you don't spend more. Maybe you end up just not having that much in your payment. So, now what got us on this tangent was this Boxable story, because we're talking about affordable housing. Excuse me. We're talking about the housing shortage. So we have the Boxable company, again, Boxabl, is trying to close the gap on at least some of the inventory problem. The star player that they have is called the Casita. It's a 375 square foot mini mansion, very mini, kitchen, bathroom, and bedroom. So this is a 1-bedroom house. It costs $50,000 and it literally unfolds and basically builds itself. They have over 190,000 reservations for these. Okay, people are lining up like it's Black Friday for affordable living, right? So these homes ship flat. They pop up in under an hour, like a transformer for your backyard. Now, the U.S. is short somewhere between 4 and 7 million homes. We've had estimates even more than that, but Boxable has part of that answer.
Julie, let's talk about that, okay? Before you jump forward. So you go to YouTube and watch one of these videos of these things being unassembled. It's just like Julie just said. They're like this, and then this wall goes up, this wall goes up, this wall goes up, this wall goes up, and then the ceiling pops up. Now it's tiny, right? But you can combine these, and you can take 400 square feet plus 400. Now you're 800. You guys can do the math.
Yep.
So that's how these things are designed. So you can go connect them, or you can go one on top of the other. As Julie moves forward, she's going to talk about different ways that these are being designed. Oh, by the way, it's interesting. Elon Musk is rumored to live in one of these at Starbase.
I'm about to mention him.
Oh, yes. Okay. Sorry.
No, that's great, because he's basically kind of quasi endorsed this.
Yeah.
And you'll like this part, car nerd. Porsche, Porsche Design and D.R. Horton equals housing's coolest collab with Boxable. Okay. They're not just throwing together these tiny homes. They've teamed up with Porsche Design to make their factories sleek and efficient, and D.R. Horton, America's biggest home builder, for street cred and pilot orders. It's like Elon Musk calling the Casita cool. Wasn't enough. He did come out with that, and that did give them a boost. This is a $3.4 billion company already. They deliver homes in 3 to 4 days, faster than an Amazon Prime order. And again, to your point, Tim, it basically builds itself. There's no following like IKEA instructions to do it on your own. Their factory, designed with Porsche, aims to churn out tens of thousands of homes yearly. The Casita is 361 to 375 square feet. Again, it's 50,000. It's cheaper than a fancy car and even more comfortable. Classified as an accessory dwelling. A lot of our coaching clients are in areas with these ADUs, especially California. You've got ADUs in your backyards. It is classified that way because that's your next question, is how are these going to be fitting into zoning? But it's an ADU, pops up in backyards. It's in 11 states where zoning laws have already given it the green light. So it's approved in Arizona, California, New Mexico, Utah, et cetera. You can look that up on their website. And they also have a tiny baby box, which is great for an office or a mother-in-law suite or something like that, or even homeschooling. That's a 120 square foot one for only 20 grand. Okay. Now that's classified as an RV. The casita plays nice as an ADU, where zoning laws are loosening faster than a bad perm is what our AI wrote there. Anyway, they've got the paperwork sorted out to meet local codes. You still need to figure out what that is for your own area, but this could be a solution for some of you that need home offices. You know, there's areas where maybe your house is a $500,000 house, and to get that extra bedroom to put your office in, you're going to have to spend $1 million. Maybe this is a better solution for you. So lots of different ways to look at this, but they certainly have traction. Now, on a different standpoint, Tim, you might also look at Boxable as something to invest in, because look at what their valuation already is. And their minimum investment is just $1,000. They've got one investment for non-accredited investors and one for accredited. And with that many orders and the delivery time only 3 to 4 days, I don't know where this is going to go, if you're going to have Boxable neighborhoods or if it's just going to be the ADU market, or how this is going to happen.
We need to tell them what ADU
thoughts?
stands. What does ADU stand for?
The
Additional dwelling
accessory
unit.
dwelling unit. Accessory
Yeah.
dwelling unit.
So like
It's like an extra. It's a mini house in addition to your house.
So Julie, our double in Church Street in Georgetown, why wouldn't we put
that too?
Why wouldn't we put two of those because those have big backyards that we have to
Split
pay
it up,
to
put a
have
fence
cut
down
every
the
month.
middle.
Yeah, but seriously,
Yeah.
there already is a fence down the middle. We should just drop a couple. Yeah, drop a couple of these in and call it a day.
It could, but you know, you could do a home office space, you could do a workshop, you could do homeschooling pods there. There's all kinds of cool uses for those. And we do see zoning lightening up. That's part of the new housing initiative that's out there. So something to keep track of. I just thought that was interesting.
Yeah. So what the reason that the size that they are, I don't know if you read this, Julie, was because they needed to be able to fit them on the back of an 18-wheeler on a flatbed thing or whatever they call them in the back of 18-wheelers. So that's the reason that the size that they are.
Makes sense.
But they are designed. If you guys go to Boxable, I think there's 4 different designs of these things, and they're just the Boxables.
And they say they're coming out with a larger, more like a 2-story traditional looking Boxable as well. That's on the horizon.
I have to say this too. When I was originally studying this company, it was probably 4 years ago. I thought it was very fascinating because my preconceived notions about something like that, it would be some sort of piece of junk. And it was just the opposite. Like the walls have more insulation in them than normal houses do by a huge country mile. And then it already comes pre-plumbed. It already comes with you have HVAC is already set up. And so the requirements to actually make this thing into a livable unit you have to have, I think you're supposed to put it on a slab. You're supposed to put it on a concrete slab. And then you have to, provide obviously.
You'd have to have utilities.
Right. A septic at the very least, and plus utilities. But Julie, think about it. Nowadays, you would need, depending on how isolated you are, if you can run electric to it, you can just run Starlink and you're off to the races, really. I mean,
Maybe
it's pretty incredible.
Put a podcast studio across the street here.
Yeah, wouldn't that be nice?
You never know.
So you wouldn't have to be in our bedroom anymore with the light blur, with the background blur.
Exactly. Right. There's that. Not that I was thinking about that. Okay. Excuse me. Ready for number 3?
Yeah, let's go to number 3. Remember, listeners, you're supposed to be voting 1, 2, or 3. Which is your favorite story so far? Julie, let's vamp a little bit more on the second point.
Okay.
There's other different types of what would have been unfinanceable sort of
modulars
housing
and stuff.
Exactly. That are also being developed in China, which I don't know if you guys have seen ads for these things before. I don't know if you've seen them, Julie, but they're phenomenal. I don't know how to describe them other than to say it looks like a very fancy private yacht without the boat part. So you have.
Yeah, you did show me those. Those were cool.
Yeah.
They were kind of curvy.
Yeah, they were curvy and they were big too.
Yeah.
And again, they were all designed to ship from China on shipping containers, so the long ass shipping containers designed to fit in the shipping container, and then delivered on the back of a normal truck. So I think normal trucks, again, I'm only guessing, I think they're 50 feet long, maybe longer. And then you have it delivered and then you crane it off and you drop it in. And this thing was completely done. So the Boxable thing has to open and, do the origami thing. These things I'm talking about aren't like that. And they're freaking nice too, honestly.
I remember looking on there. They look beautiful.
They did. And so this is what the future of housing is going to be. And if you think to yourself, well, like, like Julie and I naturally do, well, how's the hell's anyone going to live in there? Go and look to see what I'm talking about. And you'll see what I'm talking about
Hmm.
as far as the quality in what you get. And they're beautiful. Julie and I's first house when we got married was on in Clintonville, Ohio. And it was how many square feet? 750?
726.
Yeah, and let me tell you, I mean, that house now, which is hilarious, is worth like 350 grand. But if I had to choose between living in one of those two variants of these modular housing that we just discussed, or
Yeah,
living in the first house that Julie and I had, trust me when I tell you, I'd
exactly.
rather live in like that nice place that you
Which
can.
was, yeah, our first house was built in 1946 and we had to
Yeah,
do everything to it, the windows and the roof and all the things, right? You don't have to do
yeah.
that with these.
Well, so guys, just open your mind to what we're saying here. So as zoning laws change, if all of a sudden you can have like, don't just think modulars like old, like junky neighborhoods. Okay, that don't think like that. Think of a modular neighborhood and do your own research on this as homes that look really nice, really cool, landscaping, driveways, all the things. But the actual cost of construction was massively less. And so you're going to see, I think, whole communities that pop up, but the zoning has to change. But really, what has to make the zoning change, or there has to be an increased demand, and that's going to go back to the point 1.5 that we had with regards to Fannie and Freddie, allowing for modular financing to be more readily financed. And when that happens, they're going to see a flurry of new activity. There's another company, Julie, that I discovered was Sweden or from Norway or something.
Hmm.
And theirs were beautiful, all wood, and there were A-frames, and there were all these different designs on the inside. They looked like
Yeah.
modern, just gorgeous homes. Again, designed to be dropped someplace. That's the
Do you remember
future
the
of housing.
pricing on those by chance?
Those were expensive because I was actually thinking about one of those for one of our lots in North Carolina.
Hmm.
And that was delivered like $300,000. And if I was, and I compared to building with stick in that particular market, and it was more expensive to buy the delivered home. Now, I didn't take into consideration, and both required the same cost for site prep. But what I didn't take into consideration in retrospect was the stick built home and all the other trades that would have to have gone in there to finish it: electric, plumbing, HVAC,
Sure.
and the rest of it. Whereas the delivered homes, all that stuff is already built into the actual product. So I bet you if I were actually comparing done house to done house, I bet you the delivered product would be a hell of a lot less. And if you consider how much less time it would take to build,
Hmm.
that's going
Well,
to,
that's true too.
yeah.
Labor costs.
So
Yeah.
we're telling you guys about what really are a limited available or a limited number of different. Google this if you want to see more. It's
Hmm.
just it's expansive what's happening in Europe really. But as zoning changes, where all of a sudden you can, right now the only type of product can be built here is a stick built home. If all of a sudden that changes, and then people can finance those things, who is going to want to buy an old stick built house?
Yeah.
It's a different level of new construction competition on resale, but it's also probably going to be one of the easiest, quickest ways, most efficient ways to really save the lack of inventory that's going to be
Hmm.
overhanging, the industry for decades,
Yeah.
which, that's a huge
Well,
problem.
and look how affordable, like the boxable product, the tiny one is 20 grand. The not quite as tiny one is 50 grand.
Right.
And then, so when they come out with their, and you, as you said, right now, you can attach those and buy two of them and then you'll have your 2 bedroom house, but they're coming out with a 2 story as well. So what if that comes in at like 150? Think about how many of those they could sell. It
Well,
would be
Julie, they're
unbelievable.
also built. Some of the ones I was describing when they deliver, you could actually
Like you stack them or something,
you
right?
can stack them, but you could also put them on pylons. You could
Hmm.
put them on some sort of. You can elevate them, make them into like tree houses. So
Yeah.
maybe lots that are crazy to build before because normal construction couldn't do it.
Hmm.
You could start building a deck that comes right out and drop it on there.
Very cool.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Is that again, Julie and I are always trying to challenge our thinking with regards to virtually everything. And when it comes to these ready-made homes, which is what they really are, it's really fascinating how fast technology can evolve to meet demand if just stupid bureaucracy gets out of the way,
That's true.
which is really the thing that's holding a lot of things back.
Yeah, that's right. So let's see. Speaking of technology, our story number 3 is just a short one. DoorDash robot deliveries. Okay. Robots zipping tacos to you. DoorDash is rolling out an adorable emissions free robot in LA and Chicago, delivering burgers and burritos to your door. They've teamed up with a company called Coco Robotics. They're sidewalk bots. and they're serving from 600 restaurants in LA or Chicago. Okay. So next time you order DoorDash in those areas, you might have a robot show up. These are developed in Helsinki. Okay. DoorDash isn't new to the robot game. They had in Helsinki, they've already done over 100,000 deliveries. So Finnish trained robots strutting their stuff in LA and Chicago, dodging skateboards, keeping your food hot. There you go. So humans,
Can I
drones,
point out?
yeah.
Can I point out an obvious problem?
What?
So I'm
Just
going to
picking
get.
one up and keeping it for yourself.
Well, okay, you're along the same lines of my thinking. I'm thinking in Helsinki, if we were to do a real quick Google and we were to research what the crime rate is in Helsinki, I'm going in
Probably
Finland.
nothing, right?
I'm going to guess nothing. Now, if you have these nice little Finnish robots that are walking down the street carrying somebody's, lunch, I wonder how long it's going to take for the, let's say the criminal element to realize the robots
For
are easy
sure.
to mug and steal the food.
Cold ransom. Who knows how that's going to go, right? What could
Exactly.
go wrong?
Well, drone deliveries. I know. Hopefully, everyone's aware of this, but you can get Walmart in some markets, like in up near Dallas. They're doing drone deliveries, and we've had, you guys again look online. You'll see videos of your package being delivered by this monstrous drone. I think it can't weigh. There's weight limitations and size limitations, but then the drone flies over your yard, and then it drops a rope basically, and then your package is at the end of this thing in this claw thing, and then it drops the package, and then it pulls the rope up really fast and flies off. And it
Crazy.
did that. It does it that way because the original drones, which would land and drop the package, were getting destroyed by dogs.
I was thinking that. I was thinking what Max would do if he saw that outside the window.
Oh my gosh, can you imagine? That
That
would
would
be
be
a
it.
dog's favorite thing every day, waiting for the day. I mean,
For
honestly,
sure.
if you had a dog that loved destroying drones and you loved your dog, you might just order some little trinket from Amazon every day just to have the
Just
dog
random.
have a playmate.
We totally would do that. Okay. Last but not least, we have story number 4, as promised in previous Fun Fridays, back to the aliens.
Oh
And
boy.
this is a huge story, actually. And maybe I think it's been suppressed by all the tariff talks, et cetera. But alien biosignature.
What?
That's right. Aliens might be waving at us. Cambridge astronomers just dropped the biggest hint yet that something alive could be chilling on an exoplanet far, far away. They spotted weird chemical signals like cosmic fingerprints that scream life on a Hycean exoplanet. Hycean is Hycean. It's a type of exoplanet, a watery world with a hydrogen rich vibe, similar to Earth, right? It's not a selfie with ET, but it is the closest we've ever gotten. And this is how this story is getting out there, is that this is the closest evidence that we've ever had. Forget about dusty Mars. These are the Hycean exoplanets are a hotspot for alien hunters. Packed with liquid water oceans and fluffy hydrogen atmospheres, they're like the ultimate beach resorts for life. Cambridge researchers zeroed in on one, sniffing out molecules that might mean microbes, plants, or who knows what, maybe even alien fish. It's like finding a cosmic welcome life sign. Hyceans are prime candidates for hosting life thanks to their wet and gassy setup. And when I read through all of this, this is my AI summary of this. When I was reading through the more nerdish articles, they were talking about this particular planet that they're studying. It wasn't like we found tiny little microbes like you hear about on the moon sometimes. We found a little evidence that maybe this dust particle could be related to life. No, this is like the entire planet has the exact right components. So it's interesting, right? They found funky chemical combos on the planet's atmosphere that point to biological processes, alien bacteria burping out weird gases. Okay, but scientists warn these signals might be space rocks playing tricks on us because they are far away. They're hyped about it, cautiously optimistic. So we'll see. One
What do
article
you
I read said they were 99% sure that there was life there.
What
So
do you think would happen if they actually came out and said there's actual aliens? What do you think would happen? What do you think, Julie, truthfully, you and I talk about this, but now then you're in front of thousands of people. If they actually have said definitively, which a lot of people essentially think there already has been a definitive disclosure. A lot of people think it's when the Pope basically said that the discovery of alien civilizations doesn't nullify God and all the rest of it. A lot
right.
of Catholics believed at that point that was essentially the Catholic Church showing their cards that they have enough proof that they believe it's actually something.
Sure.
So a lot of people believe that if there was an actual, hey, I'm using the word actual a lot because I'm struggling with the actual thought of what would happen from all this. But if there were aliens and we were able to say definitively that they do exist, what effect would that have on what would it have on society? What would that have on religion? What would that have on financial markets? What do you think?
It's a big question. I think it would affect different things in different ways. The scientific community certainly would be very curious. And I think with AI, and maybe that's part of why we're having some of these potential discoveries, I think that, it's going to be a big aha moment scientifically, right? And the curiosity would be there. So I think that would be fun. As far as like, would there be a
So if you guys just saw the person behind me, we now are believing that as we were talking about aliens,
we
we
had
got
one?
we got visited by an alien. I mean, it came in that door. You guys saw it, right? That was an alien. And it turns out aliens look a lot like my mom, but she came in that door and there you go. So
Yeah.
we've been visited and you all
And
saw it.
yeah.
If
And
you're not on YouTube, you don't know what I'm talking about. But other than that, there you go. There's all the proof you need.
proof this is a live podcast.
Exactly.
On Friday, we warned you.
Proof we do not edit. So along those lines, you guys tell me, what do you think will happen if there's actual, like, turns out there are aliens and everyone's admitted and agreed that there's aliens? How will that change things? How will that change things with you, Julie?
Well, I think, you know, my first thought is like almost like a sigh of relief and then a now what? Okay. So something now we know that we're not alone. Now what? What do they look like? Are they intelligent? Are they just, blobs of biology? What are we dealing with? And then I would hope that it doesn't become like the next politicized issue. Who's going to own that planet and how are we going to have mineral rights on that planet? And we discovered it first. And I would hope that it wouldn't go down that path. Probably some of that's inevitable, but it also could just be, I don't know, maybe there's some kind of useful minerals to us is why we're discovering it. And we could cure cancer with some little biome from there. I don't know. There's a million different paths that you could go down, but curiosity is the number one. Just like, what does that even mean? What are they like? Is it a they? Is there any, what level of biology are we talking about? Curiosity is my leading thought.
Humanity would be humbled. That's what would ultimately happen. And I don't mean militaristically. I mean,
No,
that now that we were realizing that we're one of many, that we would probably start seeing each other, humans, differently than we see ourselves
more
now.
respectfully, maybe you
And
think?
right. And I'll give you an example. After September 11th,
Mm,
you saw people driving around with, all kinds of different American flags, and people became very supportive, they became very patriotic. There was a coming together of all the political parties, of all the different religions. Everyone was on the same page. Well, I won't say all the different religions, but you guys get what I'm saying. Do you remember that? Some of you were too young. I am regretful for you that you didn't experience it, but for those of us who did, there wasn't even the most liberal parts in the country. People were all on the same page, and that's the last time. And what happened after that was that people got addicted to, and I'm not going to vamp on this, but people got addicted to the little, the little hit in your what serotonin, whatever it is, the part of your brain that likes to have that little surge of fight or flight emotion. And that's when news media went cray cray and started trying to get our attention constantly. I remember Wolf Blitzer was, all over the CNN constantly. Wolf Blitzer, breaking news, breaking news. I mean, every damn thing was breaking news. Every damn thing was something you had to hear about. Every damn thing was urgent, urgent. And then all these different media outlets were all competing for the biggest piece of salacious news. That all happened after September 11th. And that all happened because for a long time, people were just addicted to watching the news. No one turned the news off because we were all wondering if we were going to be under, you guys remember after September 11th, there were all these other little pseudo things that were happening around the country. People were getting mail what was it, Julie? What was that deadly, whatever it was,
the powder,
powder?
whatever that was.
Yeah, all kinds of craziness was happening. But there was a coming together, and I would suspect if there was ever a complete disclosure that yes, these are the alien civilizations that we know about, I would almost guarantee you that for the most part, most people would stop seeing other humans as so different, or stop being easily manipulated, I should say, by the people that want us to be at each other's throats. And just the obvious thing is the politics, right? That, right, anytime in the United States or really anywhere in the world when there's one political party that's on the out and one that's in power. There very rarely is there a unification and a coming together to accomplish anything. It is like, it's not even almost like the out of power political party is going to do anything, even if it's not necessarily especially if it's not in the best interest of the country, just to try to essentially embarrass or put the other in power political party on its heels. So politics essentially been, it always has been, but it's become more evil, just use a word that kind of cuts through it, than it's ever been right now. And that's globally too, what's happening. So there's a huge fight that's going on amongst, essentially this political, I think, ideology that's been around for decades, and it's now lost power. This one world government and this big socialization of everything, and the UN approach to all these things. And I'm not casting political dispersions either one way or the other. And I'm not trying to be red or blue. I'm just merely saying is I think if we all of a sudden knew that there was some, alien civilization out there that was sending us smoke signals, I think that we would probably all of a sudden we'd start seeing all those little distractions that the powers that are trying to get us to focus on, we'd start ignoring them in earnest, and we'd start thinking about what our real place is, not just in our neighborhoods or our communities or our countries, but in the universe. And it would probably I think, here's what I really think. I think it also would bring a return to religion like we haven't seen ever, because all of a sudden people would be looking. So government for a lot of people has become a de facto religion. A lot of people have tried to fill the empty space in their hearts, their souls, with that aren't religious, that aren't believers. They've filled it with other things, and those other things have always been very shallow impersonators of a relationship with our Creator. And a discovery of an alien civilization would, I think, in mass return people to church. And then in the single, people say, well, I'm spiritual. I'm not talking about being spiritual. People say, well, I believe in the universe and all these other things, these sort of woo-woo new age things, sort of that are tied to Eastern philosophies and Eastern religions. I'm not talking about that either. I think people would, and I think it's happening too, because if you look at what the number of millennials, which I couldn't believe this, but Julie, you pointed this out on a past podcast. The number of millennials that are starting to go to church is extraordinary. The amount of people that are like, so if you follow the tenets of, let's just say, Christianity, and I'm not choosing one religion over the other, I'm just using that one because most Americans are Christian. But if you follow the tenets of it and you just treat religion or treat Christianity, the rule book of Christianity, as your blueprint for life, your outcome in life for all the things that matter most, financial, health, marriages, family, social, all the things, the probability of you having a really great life with all the things that matter most to you, if you're religious based, goes through the roof. And you guys can study this yourself. So even if you can't quite cross the bridge to find yourself being a believer in God, even if you're kind of atheistic in your perspectives, you have to accept the fact that if you do live by Christian beliefs, that your outcome for your life is pretty much universally going to be better. So if nothing else, people will start looking to feel reconnected with a set of rules that will help them to cut through some of the false beliefs that have been, I think, injected into society, especially over the last 30, maybe 40 years, with regards to, there's just so many things that have poisoned people's ability to have, I think, frankly, good lives. There's so many things that have, and some of it's coming from, a lot of it comes from government. A lot of it comes from corporations. I mean, it does. A lot of it comes from falling out. A lot of people have been raised with a religious fundamental, blueprint for their lives. And so I think if there was a discovery of aliens, if people were willing to accept the fact that we're not the only things, that would all of a sudden cause people to sort of take a step back and reunite with the missing thing that's inside of them. And I think that would be God. That's what I personally believe.
It's like the removal of the collective human ego.
Yeah, basically. That's a good way of saying it. Thank you. You just saved me. You could have saved me about 15 minutes there. But yeah, that's what it'd do. Because it would make us feel small, frankly.
That's right.
It'd make us, yeah, it would make, and it is kind of fascinating too, how most people still see themselves as the most important thing. They see themselves, their happiness, their pleasures, their all the things, just to use, ego. Ego is a Freudian thing, but everyone kind of has a concept of what it means. If you if you don't realize, I didn't realize, no one realizes that we're all raised to basically, have an egotistical perspective on life, which is anti-Christian. So if you don't want to have, if I don't know how to talk about it anymore without sounding political, but I don't. Can you help me out there, Julie? I know you're reading my mind where I'm going with that.
Uh, I think you're right that it would cause, like you might call it the great introspection
Yeah, that's good.
and not make it like what you said, everybody's kind of their own center of the universe. And you can tell, especially how polarized people have become, that they can't even barely have a conversation or be curious about what somebody else believes, especially maybe not worldwide, but certainly in the US and maybe in the West, and would cause that great introspection. And I think your analogy to post 9/11 is very accurate. I certainly remember that. We went to New York not that soon after, and it was just like a big community village, and everybody was much more friendly and approachable and communicative. And when we went to Europe, they're like, just more, I don't know, more feeling of humanity with each other versus just all these individuals with all of their individual beliefs. I don't know.
Yeah.
We need to work on more of those projections.
Well, maybe we don't, Julie, because maybe your smoke signals from some ancient or some distant galaxy are going to be the thing
Yeah,
that people start talking about.
I know. And
But
and if they are badly behaved, then maybe the octopus will just give them a punch. And
well, maybe they're
yeah,
octopuses themselves. You've considered
a lot of
that?
people think that octopus are aliens because
Yeah.
they have a lot of interesting behaviors, and just look at what they know how to do with
So the only
changing colors and all that. Yeah,
so that was story
that was number
four.
4.
That was number four. So those are Julie's four stories. Thank you for doing the work. So you guys tell us, which of the four stories do you find most interesting, most enchanting, perhaps? What's the story that if you're meeting with some friends today that you're going to maybe pass along, that would be your inherent favorite story? I'm going to end with this because for today's podcast, because this is really, I feel this massive wave, and I felt this way for a long time, but now more than ever, I really do feel like we're coming to the end of really what will be looked upon historically as the worst housing market
Yeah,
of any lifetime.
I
And
hope so.
it's 3 years. So if you, I had a call yesterday with someone that's joining Julie and I's EXP group, and this person's probably going to be a rock star selling real estate and the whole thing. A great background, really smart person. And I joked with him and I said, so have you considered the fact that you're sort of joining real estate, beginning your license during what amounts to a real estate depression? And I didn't say anything. They didn't realize I was joking,
Mhm.
but that's really what it's been. A recession is 2 quarters of negative growth, and a depression is what we've been experiencing. And we're going to start coming out of it. And what I've been sensing, what I've been feeling, and you guys have probably been feeling this too, is there is a return to optimism, not just with regards to housing, but to the economy on a whole. Now, if you're believing what you're reading on the mainstream media about tariffs, and if you're being sucked into that vortex, you got to realize that you've given up your ability to think. Um, I think with having a balanced approach to your thoughts, you're losing your ability to think decisively, but also I think holistically, if you want to call it that, if you're just essentially relying on mainstream media. If you're not doing the work and you're not looking at both sides of any argument or both sides of any statement, then you're going to essentially just continue to be it was the red pill, blue pill, right? You're going to continue to be locked in to this way of thinking that's not ever and will never give a rat's ass about what's best for you. So you're going to have to break free of it. So if you're right now, your mind is if you are not optimistic right now, if you're not putting the pieces together that the next 25 years of housing, however many of those years you get to enjoy, could be very well the best years of your career and the best years of your life. If you're not feeling that way, I would strongly suggest that you do an active purge of all the things in your life that are causing you to feel fearful, that are causing you to feel pessimistic, that are not causing you or not allowing you to feel excited and exuberant. Because guys, there's no reason to believe. And there's Julie, did you see the article that came out? It was on Seeking Alpha. They must have listened to our podcast. I say that half joking, but they probably did. Where
What was it?
they're using a lot of our actual facts and statistics we used when we were on this podcast a few weeks ago, talking about the fact that we do believe this is the start of the a 25-year housing boom, and this is going to be what Trump will start once Fannie and Freddie are released. What we believe he's going to call make housing great again. Not being political, just predicting. And then Seeking Alpha did a lot of drill down on a lot of the facts that you and I were just sort of skimming the surface of with regards to demographics. And every single thing they said reinforces every single thing that you and I said. Lack of supply, building boom, more transactions. And yeah, guys, so we are probably through the thick of it. We are probably through the worst part of this housing crash, and we're probably entering in to a completely different era, which will bring out, and Julie and I are doing our best to inspire all of you, but we can't control what you think and you feel, but you can by allowing or disallowing some of the things that are influencing you to just be cut at the knees. And that goes to some of the people you hang out with, that goes to some of the activities you're doing. You could be going to a yoga studio, or you could be going on your group of friends you go on a walk on. Every time you go on a walk with these people, you feel like they're fresh off CNN and they're thinking the world's going to come to an end and Orange Man bad and all the rest of it. And you're coming back from this walk, and maybe you started feeling great. And you come back from this walk and you're feeling like crap. That's not going to give you the type of mindset to, do what you don't want to do, and you don't want to do it at the highest level for your real estate business. You're not going to feel like being of use to other people. You're not going to be in alignment with your highest and truest purposes with being a service to other people. You're going to feel fearful. And when you feel fearful, you stop doing the things that you would have otherwise done to make your tomorrow better than today. You guys putting all these thoughts together? So you're going to have, and the best way to monitor whether you should be continuing to input information from any one source is just to literally monitor yourself. How do you feel when you're around that person? And for me, I'm showing on video, guys. So if you're listening, it's dead center for me. So how do you feel when you're around certain people? How do you feel when you listen and read to certain things? How do you actually feel when you're in those types of environments, when you're around those types of people, when you're in maybe a brokerage right now that's causing you to feel like not optimistic? Again, you're going to have to purge all of those people urgently and all those things, all those inputs. Otherwise, you're going to get weighted down with all this nasty emotional crap that those people don't even know why they think or feel that way. Just as how they think and feel. They've never stopped to be introspective. You be introspective. And the easiest way to do it is ask yourself how you're feeling. And if you're not sharing Julie and I's energy with regards to what's ahead for you and for housing, then do an active purge and do it until all of a sudden you start to feel optimistic again, consistently, not just now and then. Julie?
Well, that requires taking back control of your own mindset and your emotions and your thought and your input into what you're listening to and watching and who you're hanging out with. You and I have run into a couple of people at our other place in Puerto Rico that were all like doom and gloom, but couldn't explain why. That was just like their thing. And we're like, okay, we can be acquaintances, but we're not hanging out with those folks because they just. Now, that said, if they had a compelling argument for having that outlook, maybe we would have looked at that and said, we've got to get in front of this and talk about this on our podcast. This thing is coming down the pipeline. If that were to happen, you would hear about it from us. We're always doing confirmation bias. We're always doing our own fact checking. But by and large, refer to that podcast from a couple of weeks ago. I think we did like 11 reasons why it's going to be the best housing boom, the longest housing boom. We're just starting to pull out of that. And some people would say, well, how can you say that this has been the worst housing market ever when we had the housing crash of 2007, 8, 9? Well, guess what? Even with those things happening, and even when you think about people that were in short sale and foreclosure back then, they were not, normally a seller is also a buyer. There were no buyer sides, very few buyer sides from all of that foreclosure and short sale action. There were still more sales during those years. Did you realize that? Those were like 4.6, 4.7, close to 5 million sales that year. When we say housing recession or housing crash, we're talking about literally a crash in the number of sales. And that's the bottom that we think that we're at. We've already seen month over month. Yes, it was a slower start to the year than we would have liked to see, but now we've got a lot of evidence that we're pulling out of it. But it does come down to your own control. What are the podcasts you're listening to? What are the books that you're listening to? That's why we make this Fun Friday for you guys, is so that we get out of that space a little bit and say, hey, did you know that these things are happening in the world? Be excited about being alive. Be excited about being part of the real estate community. but put your stamp on it. Take control yourself. Don't wait for somebody else to tell you what to think or what to do.
You know, those negative friend groups, Julie, you and I have had friends that have, like one of them got divorced and then
Hmm.
their friends have gotten divorced. And it's
Yep.
because one infects the other, infects the other, infects the other. So like, this little nastiness that kind of is pervasive amongst people, especially amongst friend groups. And a friend group can be a virtual friend group too. You might belong
Yep.
to a Facebook group or something. As soon as a little bit of, nastiness is seeded, you need to get the hell out. You just don't
Yeah.
even try to save anyone. Don't try to be Dr. Filling them. Just get out and save yourself. And what
Yeah.
you will discover is, yes, you'll discover your addiction to all the negative inputs was real, because you're going to all of a sudden have this surge of, oh my gosh, I'm missing this. I'm missing this. You're missing nothing. And then once you're done allowing that nastiness to live rent free in your brain, once you removed all the headlines from breaking news and all this crap, and you're no longer addicted to that stuff, your brain, nature abhors a vacuum. So what's going to happen is you're going to then choose what you want to enter into your brain and your mindset and
Mhm.
your, subconscious.
You're
And then,
curating your own mind.
right. And that's going to give you an opportunity to hit hard reset on your own iOS. And then you're all of a sudden going to start flourishing in all the most important ways in your life. But you've got to put a hard stop to the negative. And hopefully that's what we're doing on our podcast generally during the week, but also on these Friday shows, and kind of giving you more lighthearted information to maybe give you a little bit of a reprieve from the drudgery that sometimes
The
is real
grind
estate. Exactly.
that it can be. But I think that your prevailing thought has got to be, how can you be of service? Be the problem solver. Find the people who need you. Not every single person in the world needs to buy or sell real estate. That's okay. Find the ones that do need your help.
That's right. All right, guys. So thank you for listening to our Frantic Fun Friday. If this is the first Tim and Julie podcast you've listened to and you came here for real estate coaching and training, well, guess what? We have literally thousands of other podcasts so you can listen to for
Yes.
that. On Friday, we talk about what we like to talk about, where we talk about what we think you might want to hear about. And so hopefully you've enjoyed today's show. In the meantime, thank you for keeping this one of the most downloaded, well, the most downloaded daily podcast for real estate professionals in at least the United States. And thank you for thank you for allowing, frankly, Julie and I to be in alignment with our highest and truest purposes on this planet, which is being of service to all of you. Our goal, our mission, our professional mission is to be the best versions of ourselves as your real estate coaches, so we can make your sojourn, your trip a little bit easier along the way. So hopefully we've done that on today's show. Have a fantastic day. We'll talk with you on the podcast tomorrow.